Hello everyone, this is Blender Guppy. Welcome to a Grunge Shader nodes demo video. So someone is requesting how to use the nodes in a shader and also how to connect them using Blender. So before we start, go to Preferences and in the add-ons, look for the Node Wrangler and enable this. So this comes bundled with Blender, so it's free, and this will make it easier for us to preview the nodes, the shader group nodes individually in the shader window. So right now this object is using the group nodes. So we have to reset this. So this is cloth, and for the rest we will use select one of the objects, remove the material and new. Let's name this metal and select the rest of the object type and then make the one that's using the metal material, the active one, and then right here copy material selected. So the rest will now have that base material. I do not have the screencast keys on because it will slow down the uh, shader window when I'm using it. So I've disabled it for this video, and I also will not be speaking when I'm rendering in the viewport to avoid my voice distorting my voice, avoid distorting my voice. Okay, so let's start with the cloth first, and we have to open the nodes in the blend scene or this blend file. So right now I already have the nodes in this file. So to open them, F4 opened, and look for the Grunge Shader blend file you get from the store. So Grunge Shaders, click on that, and then go to. You can click the material to get the grunge cloth and grunge metal, but for this video, I'm going to show you how to uh, set them up from the start. So node 3, and then highlight all of them, all of these. So cavity mask, edge mask, quick dirt and scratches, and then press append. Once you do that, you can go to the shader window, shader editor, and Shift A. In group, you can find those shader group nodes right here. Okay, let's start with so we're starting with the cloth, and right now this has a vertex color the set by the random vertex color in the random flow add-on. But we can change that using the color mixes right here. So let's start with the cloth and okay, give it a let's start with a color mix. And then what I like to do is just mix some AO at the start. You can, of course, forego this if you don't like to do it. And set up a color ramp to control the ambient occlusion. If you want to view the node, just use Control Shift click. So what it did was, this is a node wrangler feature. What it did was connect this to the surface input node of the material output, so we can see the effects of this node and all the nodes that are connected to it. Only so we can see only these connections and not the entire shader. So if you want to view the entire shader again, so Control Shift click on the material principled VSDF or whatever shader you are using here. So let's view this. Now let's give the cloth, the basic cloth, some brownish color. And now let's introduce the group nodes. So the order of the connections, you can experiment with it, but what I'd like to do first is the quick dirt. And I use multiply as the factor for the color mix. And then just edit this. So let's give the black part uh, a more um, relevant color. So there we have the outer scale and the inner scale. So Control Shift clicking on this to see only this in the viewport. So this, if I, for example, use 0.5, so this is the scale of the islands, the noise island. And then the inner scale is this it uses two noise textures, and the outer scale is the first one, and then the inner scale is the one connected to the scale of the first noise texture. So basically, this controls the outer scale controls the size of the islands that make up the inner scale. There we go. That is the outer scale. And if we increase the inner scale, you see that those big chunks of the outer scale texture has been broken up using the inner scale property. So the offset, you can use the offset to randomize the position of the texture, but don't use too much because this is, I think, using the location properties in the mapping of the texture. So too much of this can start to actually affect the scale of the texture. But with, of course, the initial values, these smaller values, you can use it to actually randomize the position of the texture. So we have the threshold, which acts like a color ramp, and the softness, of course, to soften or harden the texture. And then we have the invert to reverse the effect of uh the color stamps. Okay, so next up, um, we can try cavity, but since this is cloth, I might not. So cavity works with the amount of detail in your model, depending on how sharp your peaks and valleys, like this one here. So let's try the cavity. So this is the second order, second edition. So multiply also. Control Shift click to see only this node, and so we can start modifying the properties. So valleys and peaks. So the valleys are these are the valleys, the one that's going into the mesh, the details that are going into the mesh, and the peaks are this one here. So the details that are going out from the mesh. You can set the value to 0 to disable this effect. So this is basically factor or strength. So let's see it with the whole shader compiled. You can, of course, this is mostly useful with angular models, angular hard surface models, but you can also use it with organics that have really defined details. So for this model here, the creases are not really that sharp, so the effects of the cavity shader are is minimal. So next up we have um, scratches. So with edge mask, this is mostly for hard surface angular models, but yeah. So this won't work optimally with organic. So we're going to leave this out and just use this tree for this cloth object. We have quick dirt, cavity mask, and the scratches. So let's try to add the scratches. So for the scratches, you can uh, add this to the color or just use it for the bump. Control Shift click to preview it. Okay, so this is basically noise texture that has been distorted to create this scratch effect. And the min and max here is kind of like the color ramp, the stop, the color stop 1 and color stop 2 of the color ramp. You see the color stop here. So these two here kind of represents the min and max or property in the scratches node. So when we can try to uh, modify this in order to have the same effect as the color ramp node. So the grade makes the each of the detail grainy. So kind of breaks them apart. So the effect is subtle, but it's noticeable. And we also have the invert, which of course reverses the color. So let's set it to multiply. Let's see the shader compiled. Okay, let's adjust the scale, make smaller, and use it for bumps. You can also use quick dirt for bumps if you want, but using group nodes like this will have a heavier footprint in the processing of the shader because it's trying to, of course, process all this math and then, of course, connected to the shader. So it has using textures, image textures will be lighter, but you're stuck with the texture. But with the group nodes, you of course can modify the values anytime you want, but it will be heavier when you render it. Okay, especially when you're using it for something like a bump detail. So vector, and we're going to use bump and set this to height. Automatically, it will set to normal. So press drag and set it to height. And let's try 0.5 strength and then adjust it from there. We can also lower down the effect of the uh, tone down the effect of the scratches texture. Use in the color mix factor right here. So with 0, you're just using it for the bump. Let's increase it to 1 to make it more obvious. So let's use 0.2 and then just increase this to 0.5. Its color, I mean contribution to the shader. Now that we have that, we can use the texture, the aggregate texture, as to affect the roughness, and we can set this color up right here. Specular, let's set it to something like 1. Okay, so there we go. You can also connect textures to this, image texture to this, and then in the very first one, so with the AO connected, so this is our base color right here. You can also connect image textures here. Okay, now um the AO may be too much, so it's affecting the other objects. So I'm going to use inside to let it affect only uh, the cloth object and not the other objects in its vicinity. I'm sorry, it's not inside, it's only local right here. So it only affects itself and not affect the other objects that are near it. Okay, so we're gonna set the metal, but since they are mostly just the same thing, let's copy this, Control C, and then go to metal and delete this, Control V, and let's get rid of the cloth object. I mean hide the cloth object, and also this, and then oh yeah, it's already metal. Sorry about that. So go to them one by one and see the effect. Go to the shader nodes and Control Shift click on them one by one to see their effects. I mean their contribution to the shader or their effects to the shader. So we're gonna change the cavity first. So I increase the scale and then increase the noise and also the threshold to make it thinner. Okay, just a subtle effect. Toning down the AO. Now let's go to Quick Dirt and see its effect. So you can view it as an individual node or view it using the shader, the entire shader, and modify the properties. So what you're going here for is, of course, the grunge effect, but don't overdo it. Okay. So with the metal, I'm not gonna use the same brownish color like I did with the cloth. So I actually have vertex color applied to this using the random flow add-on. So selecting everything and random vertex color. Use the island limit. So for each separate set of faces, a different vertex color will be assigned. Like that. And then there's a new setting here. We go here and go to creative flow, and you use the get sharp operator, and then mark sharp those edges, and then random vertex color again. Use the sharp limit. It will create different colors based on the sharpness of the faces. So the faces will be separated as islands using the sharp boundaries. But what we actually want here is the for the triangles to for this area right here to have the same color. So what I'm going to use instead is select and single color. There we go. Okay. So in the shader node, Shift A, and then input attributes. I think this will only show up if you have Node Wrangler on, so be sure to do that. So in attributes, use select the vertex color. This this property has been created using the random flows random vertex color operator. So vertex look for the vertex color, and then the color output node connected to the A socket. Input socket of this color mix node. And let's see the effect. To magnify its effect, we can use the color ramp after the attribute node, converter, color ramp. There we go. And here, instead of just affecting the roughness, let's reset this. Select the node and press backspace to reset it. That is also a node wrangler feature. So let's use this for the metallic as well, and then for the roughness, let's invert the color. So if I'm using a color value of 1 for the metallic, that means that the roughness will be 0. So the white color represents 1, and the black color represents the 0. And then we have the gradient in between those values. We can give it a hint of brownish color using this one here. Color stop number 1 of quick dirt. Or let it stay white, and then after the color ramp in the attribute node, use the mix color and use overlay. But since we have already multiplied it here, the quick dirt, so we can use the first color stop here for the overlay effect. Okay, now let's use the edge mask node right here. Shift and then right click and drag to tie the essentially tying these two branches together. So I can connect another piece here, node here. So group and then not that edge mask and connect it here. So let's see the effects. Uh, see its effect first as a standalone or as an individual node. So radius is the thickness. So again, min max values represents the color ramp effect. But if you use both one and for the min and max, you can see the edge mask without the effect of the noise. I'm going to edit the noise effect. So since the mask is white, we're going to use add here instead. And so let's zoom in and you can see the small hint of it. Right here, for example. You can also, I think, use it for bump node. So with the bumps, the brighter the pixel will, of course, have an embossed detail, or the detail will protrude from the mesh, and darker pixels will, of course, have an indent detail or details that go into the mesh. So you can also use it for bumps. You can invert it, the color, invert, and it will have a different, of course, effect with the bump. how it affected the this one right here. So we can actually set this after the color. Okay, let's get back invert. Okay, so this is the sequence of how I do it: quick dirt, cavity mask, scratches, and edge mask. So these are all these three are multiplied, while this the edge mask is using the add mix factor. So shift equals using node wrangler will of course align the nodes so you can make the node setup look orderly. Okay, so that's the simple setup. So we have the base color here. You can use vertex color or just the basic color or texture, and you can add AO here. If you don't want the AO added, just skip this and go straight here. But next is quick dirt multiplied, cavity mask multiplied, scratches multiplied, and then we have the edge mask, which is of course added to the color. And then their aggregate result is being used to affect the metallic and the roughness, with the roughness being inverted. So the higher the metallicity, the lower the roughness gets. So with full full metallic, the surface will also be very reflective. And we use the scratches uh, for the bump, and then some minor contribution to the color as well. Now all that's left to do is edit the properties to um, make some areas subtle to control the look of the shader to make the effects more realistic and subtle. Right. So actually, this looks much better than the first one. So there you have it, your grunge shaders, and how to set them up. And you can see it's pretty easy. Again, you can experiment with the sequence of how the group nodes are added to the shader. So you can try cavity first, then quick dirt second, scratches third, and we have edge mask as fourth. And what's this one here? This one is not really doing anything. Okay. Okay, so yeah, that's how you use the nodes and connect them. And that's yeah, I forgot the hotkey for the so Shift A for the add menu right here, and there are and if you're using node wrangler, you can click on a particular node, Shift S to change it, Shift S, for example, and change it to something like checker. So you don't have to actually remove the connection and change the node. You can just use Shift S and change it to anything that you like. So that's Node Wrangler feature as well. Okay, so yeah, that is it for this video. And if you have any questions, use the comment section or the links in the description. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.